The final trial came as a surprise to everyone, including the Council leadership. An emergency message arrived at Nexus Prime from the Outer Rim territories, the colonial worlds that lay at the edge of galactic civilization. Governor Rex Mara of the Frontier Coalition appeared on the main screen of the council chamber. She was a proud being whose people resembled large cats that walked upright. Her message was brief, but troubling. We can no longer accept the council's authority over our worlds. The core systems receive all the benefits of galactic civilization, while we struggle with outdated technology and ignored requests for aid. We are declaring independence from the Galactic Council. The announcement sent shockwaves through the chamber. The Outer Rim colonies had been complaining for centuries, but no one had expected them to actually rebel. Worse still, dozens of other colonial governors were sending similar messages. Director Veltharian realized this crisis provided the perfect final test for humanity. "Captain Morrison," he said, turning to Jake, who had been observing from the gallery, "your species claims to excel at solving difficult problems. This rebellion has defied our best efforts for 3 centuries. How would humans approach this situation?" Captain Alex Turner stepped forward. He was Jake's second in command, a thoughtful man who had spent years studying how different groups of people could work together. With him came political analyst Jennifer Stone, whose sharp mind could see patterns others missed, and strategic planner Chris Baker, who could design plans that turned enemies into allies. "First," Alex said, "we need to understand what the colonists actually want. Not what we think they want, but what they're really asking for." "We know what they want," protested Councillor Deathmoran, whose people had been dealing with colonial complaints for generations. "They want independence from legitimate authority." "No," Jennifer Stone said after reviewing the colonial messages. "They want respect. They want to feel like their voices matter. Independence is just the only way they can see to get that." The council members exchanged confused looks. After 3 centuries of negotiations, committees, and carefully worded diplomatic messages, the humans were claiming the problem was much simpler than anyone had realized. "What do you propose?" asked VEL THARI on Chris Baker, activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's political structure. "The current system treats all worlds the same, regardless of their distance from the core systems or their specific needs. What if instead of one central government, we created a network of interconnected regional councils?" "Chaos," declared General Mordock immediately. "Hundreds of different governments with different rules? The complexity would be unmanageable." "Not hundreds," Chris explained. "Think of it more like a pyramid. Local councils handle local issues. Regional councils handle issues that affect multiple systems. The Galactic Council handles issues that affect everyone. Each level only deals with problems at its own scale. But how would decisions get made?" asked Administrator Nextora, a being whose job was to coordinate policy across thousands of worlds. "The communication delays alone would make coordination impossible." Jennifer Stone smiled. "What if every citizen in the galaxy could participate in decisions that affect them, connected through quantum communication networks?" The chamber erupted in horrified gasps. The idea of billions of beings all trying to make decisions together sounded like a recipe for disaster. "That's not democracy. That's mob rule," protested Ambassador Cathfar, his crystal body flashing red with alarm. "Not if it's properly organized," Alex explained. "Humans have been experimenting with large-scale democracy for." Director Veltharian stood before the full Galactic Council Assembly. The massive chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from hundreds of worlds waited to hear about the human situation. Many had traveled for weeks to be present for this historic moment. "Fellow council members," Veltharian began, his starlight form glowing more brightly than usual, "we face an unprecedented situation. The humans have presented us with capabilities and approaches we have never encountered. Before we can consider full membership, we must determine if they possess the wisdom to use their abilities responsibly. A murmur ran through the chamber. The testing protocols had been used for millions of years. They were designed to take decades to complete, requiring patience, careful planning, and deep consideration of consequences. We propose to administer the standard trials of galactic citizenship, Veltharion announced. These trials will determine humanity's readiness to join our community. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Martin stepped forward when his name was called. He was a steady man with gray at his temples who had spent his life solving complex problems. Behind him stood engineer Michelle Roberts, a brilliant woman who could build anything she could imagine, and diplomat Gary Phillips, a calm man who could find common ground between the most stubborn opponents. "We're honored by your trust," Steve said to the assembled council. "We'll do our best to prove that humanity is ready to be part of the galactic community." The first trial was called the Test of Patience. It involved solving a complex mathematical puzzle that required centuries of careful calculation. The traditional approach was to form committees, debate each step thoroughly, and proceed only when every detail had been examined from every angle. Steve looked at the puzzle for a few minutes, then turned to his team. "Michelle, can you run these calculations through our ship's computer? Gary, I need you to check the logic patterns. I'll work on the underlying assumptions." The alien observers watched in confusion as the three humans split up the work instead of debating it as a group. Within 2 hours, they had not only solved the puzzle, but had found 3 alternative solutions that were more elegant than the other. "Original, impossible," whispered Council Member Thexarian, a being that resembled a giant brain floating in a crystal sphere. "The fastest any species has completed this test was 3 months." The second trial was the test of wisdom. It presented an ethical dilemma about how to fairly distribute limited resources among different populations with conflicting needs. Most species spent years developing careful philosophical frameworks before attempting a solution. Gary Phillips listened to the problem and asked, "Can we talk directly to representatives from each affected group?" "That's not how this is typically done," replied Test Administrator Colthran. "The test is designed to be solved through pure reasoning." "But how can we make good decisions about people without talking to them?" Gary asked. "The best solutions come from understanding what everyone actually needs." Within hours, Gary had organized discussions between all the affected groups. Instead of imposing a solution from above, he helped them find a compromise that satisfied everyone. The test that typically took years was completed in a single day. Dr. Sandra White, the mission psychologist, was observing these trials alongside alien behavioral specialists. She was a thoughtful woman who understood how minds worked, both human and apparently alien. "Dr. White," asked Chief Behavior Analyst Morpheus, a creature that looked like a walking tree with eyes on its branches, "why do your people approach these challenges so differently?" "Humans are collaborative problem solvers," Sandra explained. "We evolved in groups, so our first instinct is to pool our knowledge and divide up tasks based on individual strengths." "But what about the need for careful deliberation?" Morpheus asked. "How can you be certain your solutions are correct without extensive analysis?" "We don't need to be certain," Sandra replied. "We just need to be good enough to start, then. We improve as we go. Humans are comfortable with imperfect solutions that can be adjusted." This concept horrified many of the alien observers. Their civilizations had spent millions of years developing perfect solutions to problems. The idea of implementing something that might need adjustment later seemed reckless. The third trial was the test of restraint. It required the humans to demonstrate that they wouldn't abuse advanced technology by showing how they would handle a powerful weapon that could destroy entire worlds. The test presented them with a scenario where they had access to such a weapon. and an enemy who threatened their people. Most species spent months in careful debate before concluding that the weapon should be locked away and never used. Steve Martin looked at the scenario for about an hour, then gave his answer. We'd tell everyone we had it. What? Gasped Security Council member Vorgek, a heavily armored being whose people had once been warriors. You would reveal your ultimate weapon? Sure, Steve replied. The weapon is only useful if nobody knows about it. If everyone knows we have it, then no one will attack us because they know we could defend ourselves. But they also know we're not hiding anything, which means they can trust us not to use it unless we absolutely have to. The alien observers exchanged confused glances. This approach was completely backwards from their understanding of strategic thinking. Yet somehow, the logic was sound. But what if someone calls your bluff? Asked Vorgek. Then we'd have to decide. If we're really willing to use it, Steve admitted. But by being honest about having it, we make it less likely we'll ever need to make that choice. The fourth trial was the test of innovation. It challenged the humans to solve a technical problem that had puzzled galactic engineers for centuries: how to safely transport antimatter without the risk of catastrophic explosions. Michelle Roberts studied the problem for several hours, then began sketching designs that made no sense to the watching engineers. Instead of building bigger containment fields or stronger magnetic bottles, she was designing something that looked like a children's toy. What is this? Asked Chief Engineer Fluxcoil, whose body was made of living metal. Yo, Michelle replied. Well, sort of. The antimatter is contained in a sphere that's constantly moving back and forth along a cable. If the containment fails, the motion carries the explosion away from anything important. But the constant motion would destabilize the containment, protested Fluxcoil. Not if you design the containment to be stabilized by motion instead of stability, Michelle explained. Instead of fighting the forces, you use them. She built a working prototype in 3 days. It was crude compared to galactic technology standards, but it worked perfectly and was much safer than existing methods. Final trial was the test of leadership. It required the humans to demonstrate how they would lead a diverse group of beings with different needs, abilities, and perspectives. Instead of developing a complex hierarchy or detailed management system, the humans did something that stunned the observers. They asked the diverse group what kind of leadership they wanted. You're the test subjects, explained Gary Phillips to a group of volunteer aliens from different species. You tell us what you need from leaders, and we'll try to provide it. Some wanted clear directions and firm guidance. Others wanted freedom to make their own choices. Some needed constant communication, while others preferred to work independently. Instead of trying to lead everyone the same way, the humans adapted their leadership style to match what each individual needed. Steve provided firm guidance to those who wanted it. Gary gave autonomy to those who preferred independence. Michelle offered technical support to those who needed it. Within a week, the diverse group was working together more effectively than anyone had thought possible. Administrator Cole Thrain was filing his daily report to the council leadership, and his normally steady voice was shaking. Director, the humans have completed all 5 trials. Total time elapsed 8 days, 14 hours, 37 minutes. 8 days? Veltharian's starlight form flickered with disbelief. The previous record was 6 months. Sir, there's more. Their solutions aren't just fast, they're better than the traditional answers. They've found approaches we never considered. As news of the test results spread through the station, aliens gathered in small groups to discuss what this meant. Some were excited by the possibilities. Others were terrified of the changes that might come. But everyone agreed on one thing: the galaxy would never be the same again. The next morning, mission specialist Kate Thompson sat in a room filled with the strangest library she had ever seen. Books floated in the air. Glowing crystals contained entire databases, and walls showed moving pictures of historical events from across the galaxy. She was here to share human history with Council Historian Prime Nexustel. Kate was a quiet woman who loved stories, especially true ones about how people lived and grew throughout time. She had brought with her the complete recorded history of humanity, from the first cave paintings to their journey to the stars. Nexustel was a being unlike anything Kate had imagined. She looked like a shifting cloud of silver mist that sometimes took the shape of a person. When she spoke, her voice sounded like whispers from 1,000 different people, all talking at once. "Please, Miss Thompson, tell me about your species." "Development," Nexustel said, her misty form settling into a chair-like shape. "We are most curious about how you achieved space travel so quickly." Kate activated her portable display unit. "Well, the first thing you should understand is that humans have never been alone on our world. We've always had to compete and cooperate with other humans just to survive." Images of early human civilizations appeared in the air between them. Nexustel watched with growing fascination as Kate explained how humans had spread across their planet, forming different groups that sometimes fought and sometimes worked together. "You see," Kate continued, "while other species on Earth were stronger or faster than us, humans learned to work in teams and make tools. We had to be creative to survive." "But this shows constant warfare," Nexustel observed, her form flickering with what might have been concern. "How did your species survive such violence?" "The same conflicts that nearly destroyed us also pushed us to innovate," Kate explained. "War forced us to develop better medicine to heal the wounded. It made us build better transportation to move supplies. It even pushed us to develop better communication systems." The images changed to show human scientific discoveries. Nexustel watched as humans learned about fire, agriculture, writing, mathematics, and eventually space travel. But what shocked her was the timeline. "These developments happened simultaneously," she whispered in amazement. "Your people were developing art while also creating weapons. You were writing poetry while also studying the stars. How is this possible?" Kate smiled. "Humans are naturally curious about everything. We can't help but ask questions and try to find answers, even when we're busy with other things." Meanwhile, in the main council chamber, Director Valtharion was meeting with his most trusted advisors. The massive room felt smaller today, filled with tension and worry. "The mathematical models are clear," reported Dr. Quantum Rex, a being made of living equations that appeared as shifting numbers in the air. "At their current rate of technological advancement, humans will match our most advanced civilizations in approximately 50 of their years." "50 years?" gasped Ambassador Kethfer, his crystal body flashing bright red. "That's impossible. It took my people 10,000 years to reach our current level of technology." "That's precisely the problem," said General Morgak. "Every other species in our records follows the same pattern. They achieve peace on their homeworld, then slowly develop space technology over thousands of years. Humans are doing everything at once." Valtharion studied the data floating in front of him. Charts showed the development curves of every known galactic civilization, and they all looked the same: slow, steady progress over vast periods of time. The human curve was completely different. It shot upward like an arrow, growing steeper with each generation. "There's something else," added Dr. Quantum Rex. "The humans' approach to problem solving is unlike anything we've seen. They don't follow logical progressions. They make intuitive leaps that shouldn't work, but somehow do." "Show me," Valtharion commanded, the air filled with a recording from the day before. It showed Commander Paul Henderson, the human military advisor, working through a tactical simulation. The simulation was a famous puzzle used in galactic military academies. A complex battle scenario that typically took trained strategists months to solve. They watched as Paul studied the situation for just a few minutes, then began making moves that seemed random and illogical. He split his forces when conventional wisdom said to concentrate them. He attacked from unexpected directions. He used his weakest units in ways that should have guaranteed their destruction. The simulation ended with a complete victory for Paul's forces. How long did this take him? Asked General Mordock, his armor plating rattling with nervousness. 17 minutes, replied Dr. Quantum single quotes Rex. The room fell silent. The best military minds in the galaxy had spent decades trying to solve that same scenario. Run it again, Valtharion ordered. Give him a different scenario. They tried 5 more simulations, each one designed to test different aspects of strategic thinking. Paul solved all of them in under 30 minutes each, using methods that the Council's military experts couldn't even understand. It's not just military strategy, reported Dr. Vexthara, joining the meeting via holographic projection. I've been observing their scientific methods. They approach problems from multiple directions simultaneously. Instead of following a single, logical path, they explore dozens of possibilities at once. That should lead to chaos and confusion, protested architect Zul Main. It should, agreed Dr. Vexthara. But somehow they make it work. They seem to thrive on controlled chaos. Back in the historical archives, Kate was showing Nexustel something that made the ancient historian's misty form tremble with fear. This is your most recent century, Kate was explaining, showing images of humans in the 20th and 21st centuries. We developed nuclear weapons, computers, space travel, and genetic engineering all within the same 100-year period. While still fighting wars, Nexustel observed with horror. Yes, but also while creating the greatest art, literature, and music in our history, Kate added. Humans don't slow down during difficult times. We speed up. The images showed human achievements that seemed impossible when viewed together. While humans were fighting global wars, they were also sending probes to other planets. While dealing with economic collapse, they were also making breakthrough medical discoveries. While facing environmental destruction, they were also developing clean energy technologies. Your species appears to be driven by a force we don't understand, Nexustel said softly. Every other civilization in the galaxy achieves stability first, then progress. Humans achieve progress through instability. I suppose that's one way to look at it, Kate replied. We've never known a time when things were completely peaceful or settled. There's always been some challenge pushing us to adapt and grow. But what happens when there are no more challenges? Nexustel asked. What drives humans when they have solved all their problems? Kate was quiet for a moment, then smiled. We find new problems to solve, or we create them ourselves. Humans get bored easily. That evening, the Council's leadership met in emergency session. The evidence was overwhelming and terrifying. Humanity wasn't just another species joining the galactic community. They represented something completely new, a form of intelligence that thrived on challenge and change. The implications are staggering, Valtharion said to the assembled group. If humans continue their current development trajectory, they won't just join our civilization, they'll transform it. Is that necessarily bad? Asked Ambassador Serindo, a peaceful being who resembled a walking flower. Perhaps change is what our galaxy needs. Change that happens over thousands of years can be managed, replied General Mordock. Change that happens in decades could destroy everything we've built. Or it could make everything better, countered Dr. Vexthara. The human solutions to our test problems were not just effective, they were elegant in ways we never considered. Valtharion looked around the room at faces and other features, filled with worry and wonder. They were dealing with something beyond their experience. The question was no longer whether humans should be allowed to join the galactic community. Question was whether the galaxy was ready for humanity. 3 hours passed before the Galactic Council responded to the human ship. During that time, the Liberty's Dawn floated quietly outside the massive station, while hundreds of alien leaders argued about what to do. Director Prime Veltharion finally spoke through the communication system. His voice was calm and wise, like an old teacher speaking to a young student. Captain Morrison, I am Veltharion, Director of the Galactic Council. Your arrival has surprised us. We grant you temporary sanctuary while we determine the proper course of action. Please follow the guide ships to Docking Bay 7. Jake felt relief wash over him. At least they weren't shooting. Thank you, Director. We appreciate your hospitality. 2 sleek alien ships appeared near the Liberty's Dawn. They were beautiful vessels that looked like they were made of flowing water and light. The human ship followed them toward one of the many openings in the giant station dot. As they docked, Jake gathered his team. Remember, we're representing all of humanity here. Be respectful, be curious, but don't touch anything unless they say it's okay. Doctor. Helen Rodriguez checked her equipment one last time. She was a small woman with kind eyes who had spent her life studying life forms on Earth. Now she would be the first human to study alien life. My scanners are picking up dozens of different life signs in the docking bay. This is incredible. The airlock opened, and the humans got their first look at the inside of an alien space station. The docking bay was enormous, with a ceiling that disappeared into shadows high above. The walls glowed with soft blue light, and the floor felt warm under their feet. Waiting for them was a group of the strangest beings Jake had ever seen. The leader was Veltharion himself, who looked like a large owl made of stars. Next to him stood Ambassador Kethfer, whose crystal body was now glowing a cautious yellow color. Welcome to Nexus Prime, Veltharion said. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. I must admit, we did not expect to meet you for several more centuries. Jake stepped forward and offered his hand in the human gesture of greeting. We're honored to be here. We know our arrival must be confusing. Veltharion looked at the offered hand for a moment, then carefully extended one of his wing-like appendages to touch it. The contact sent a warm feeling through Jake's arm, and he realized this being was very old and very wise. Come, said the director. The council wishes to understand how this is possible. They were led through corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. The walls showed moving pictures of different worlds, some with purple skies, others with crystal mountains, and some that looked like Earth, but with 2 suns in the sky. How many species are part of your council? Asked Lisa Brooks, walking beside a creature that looked like a walking tree with silver leaves. 847 confirmed members, replied the tree-like being in a voice like wind through branches. Each represents a world that has achieved interstellar travel and demonstrated wisdom enough to join our community. They entered a smaller chamber where dozens of alien scientists waited. Dr. Helen Rodriguez felt her heart race with excitement. This was every scientist's dream, to study life that had evolved on completely different worlds. Dr. Rodriguez, said a being made of what looked like living metal, I am Architect Zul Nain. We would very much like to understand your species and your technology. Would you be willing to share information with us? Of course, Helen replied. We brought detailed records of human history, biology, and our technological development. We're just as curious about you as you are about us. What happened next amazed both sides. As Helen shared information about human development, the alien scientists grew more and more confused. According to their understanding of how species evolved, what humans had accomplished should have been impossible. You developed nuclear power before you achieved global peace? Asked Dr. Vexthara, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish made of light. That is Extremely dangerous. Yes, we almost destroyed ourselves several times, Helen admitted. But we learned from our mistakes and kept moving forward. And you developed computers while you still had wars between different groups of your own species? Asked Zulmain. Humans have always been competitive, Helen explained. Even when we fight, we also work together. Competition drives us to innovate, but cooperation helps us survive. The aliens exchanged worried looks. Every other species in the galaxy had followed the same basic pattern. First, they achieved peace and unity on their homeworld, then they slowly and carefully developed space travel over thousands of years. Humans had done everything backwards, and in a fraction of the time. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Security Chief Ryan Peters was getting a guided tour with his team. Ryan was a big man with sharp eyes who noticed everything around him. The alien giving them the tour was General Mordak, the armored creature who served as the Council's military advisor. Your security systems are impressive, Ryan said, watching as doors opened automatically and lights adjusted themselves as they walked. But I notice you don't seem to have many guards. Guards? General Mordak was confused. Why would we need guards? All our member species are peaceful. We resolved our conflicts long ago. Ryan stopped walking. You mean nobody ever tries to steal things? Or break rules? Or cause trouble just because they're angry? Of course not, the general replied. Such behavior was eliminated from our societies millions of years ago. Do humans still engage in such primitive actions? Ryan and his team exchanged glances. General, I think we need to have a longer conversation about human nature. Back in the science lab, Helen was demonstrating human technology to the alien researchers. She showed them a simple human computer, and their reaction shocked her. This is remarkable, breathed Zulmain, studying the device carefully. The design is so chaotic, yet it works. How is this possible? What do you mean, chaotic? Helen asked. Your circuits follow no logical pattern, explained Dr. Vexthara. Our computers are designed with perfect efficiency, every component. In its optimal position, every connection precisely calculated. But your computer, it looks like it was built by trial and error. Well, yes, Helen said. That's exactly how we built it. We tried different approaches until we found ones that worked. The aliens fell silent again. In their experience, technology was developed through careful planning and mathematical precision. The idea of building something through trial and error seemed wasteful and dangerous. Yet the human approach had somehow produced results faster than their careful methods. As the day continued, more and more shocking discoveries were made. Humans had developed medicine while they still believed in magic. They had built flying machines before they fully understood the science of flight. They had reached their moon while their planet was still divided into competing nations. Director, Architect Zulmain reported to Veltharion that evening. We need to discuss these findings. The humans don't follow any known pattern of development. According to our models, their approach should have resulted in extinction long ago. Yet here they are, Veltharion replied thoughtfully, standing in our station, having traveled faster than light to reach us. There's something else, Zulmain continued. Their rate of progress is still accelerating. If they continue developing at this pace, yes, the director prompted. They could match our most advanced civilizations within a few generations. Maybe less. Veltharion was quiet for a long moment. In his thousands of years of life, he had never encountered a situation like this. The humans were not just another species joining the galactic community. They were something entirely new. Something that could change everything. The question was, would that change be for better or worse? Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty's Dawn, staring at the massive structure floating in space ahead of them. The alien station was bigger than anything he had ever seen. It looked like a giant wheel made of silver metal, spinning slowly against the black sky filled with stars. "How big is that thing?" asked Lisa Brooks, the ship's navigator. She was a small woman with short brown hair who never seemed surprised by anything. But today, her eyes were wide with wonder. "The computer says it's about 50 miles across," answered Danny Walsh from his engineering station. He was a tall man with rough hands who could fix anything that broke on their ship. "That's bigger than most cities back on Earth." Amy Carter, their communications officer, looked up from her controls. "I'm getting signals from that station. Lots of them. Different languages, different patterns. There must be hundreds of different groups talking to each other in there." Jake nodded slowly. 6 months ago, they had left Earth after picking up strange radio signals from deep space. The signals were clearly not human. They spoke of trade routes, political meetings, and something called the Galactic Council. Jake's team had been chosen to make first contact with whatever was out there. They had used Earth's newest invention, the quantum drive, to travel faster than light. The journey had taken them far from home, following the source of those mysterious signals. Now they had found it. "Sir, should I try to talk to them?" Amy asked. Jake thought for a moment. This was the biggest decision in human history. Whatever he said next would determine how the human race would be remembered by the rest of the galaxy. "Do it," he said. "Tell them we come in peace." Meanwhile, inside the giant station called Nexus Prime, Ambassador Kethver was having a very boring day. He was a tall, thin creature made of living crystal that changed colors when he spoke. Today, he was presenting the monthly report to the Galactic Council about primitive species that might one day join them. The council chamber was huge, with seats for representatives from 847 different worlds. Most of the aliens looked very different from each other. Some had tentacles, others had wings. Some were made of gas, others were living rocks. But they all had one thing in common. They had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. "The species on the third planet of the Sol system continues to show promise," Kethvar was saying. His crystal body glowed blue as he spoke. "They have discovered radio waves and atomic energy. We estimate they will achieve basic space travel in approximately 300 of their years." The other council members barely listened. They had heard reports like this thousands of times before. Species took a very long time to develop. First, they had to survive on their home planet, then learn to work together, then slowly build the technology needed to reach the stars. It was a process that usually took millions of years. Suddenly, alarms began to ring throughout the chamber. The sound was sharp and urgent, making many of the aliens jump in their seats. "Alert! Alert! Unknown vessel approaching Nexus Prime," announced the station's computer in a voice that echoed through the chamber. Council. Director Prime Veltharion rose from his seat. He was an ancient being who looked like a large, wise owl made of starlight. His people had been the first to travel between worlds, long before most other species had even developed fire. "Show us," he commanded. A huge screen appeared in the center of the chamber. On it, they could see a small ship approaching their station. The ship was made of metal and looked crude compared to the sleek vessels used by council members. It had engines that glowed white-hot and left a trail of particles behind it. "That design," whispered Dr. Nexustel, the council's chief scientist. She was a being made of pure energy who rarely showed surprise. "I've seen it in our files. It matches the theoretical designs from the Sol system." "Impossible," said General Mordak, the council's military advisor. He was a large creature covered in thick armor plating. "Our last report showed they were still using chemical rockets to barely reach their own moon." The screen suddenly filled with a new voice. It was strange and alien to their ears, speaking in patterns they had never heard before. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Liberty's Dawn. We come from the planet Earth in the Sol system. We picked up your signals and followed them here. We request permission to dock and make peaceful contact with your people. The chamber fell completely. Silent. Over 800 of the galaxy's most advanced species sat without moving, without speaking, without even breathing. The impossible had just happened. A species they had classified as primitive had just appeared at their doorstep with faster than light travel. Velfarian was the first to recover. In his long life, he had seen many surprises, but nothing like this. "Computer," he said slowly, "verify the origin of that vessel." "Confirmed," the computer replied. "Ship design and energy signatures. Match Sol system technology. Vessel is broadcasting identification signals consistent with the third planet of that system. But how?" asked Ambassador Kethvar, his crystal body now flashing red with confusion. "They shouldn't have this technology for centuries." On the screen, they could see the human ship getting closer. It was small compared to their massive station, but it was definitely real. Inside that ship were beings from a world they had been watching from afar. Beings who had somehow accomplished in decades what other species took millennia to achieve. Amy Carter's voice came through the speakers again. "We know this might be unexpected. We're willing to wait for your response. We just want to talk." The council members looked at each other in confusion and wonder. In all their millions of years of experience, in all their careful planning and preparation, nothing had prepared them for this moment. The humans had arrived, and they had done it 300 years ahead of schedule.